The hallmark of the phase we're in now is very definitely uncertainty. I don't think we've had a budget for years. We are facing the prospect of, under the best scenario, significant cuts to the government budget, and of course there is the looming question of sequestration. You can have a discussion with any dozen people, you're going to get 14 different answers about whether we're going to have sequestration or not. The problem with budget is compounded with the uncertainty, which makes everybody put down their pencils and wait, and that I think is one of the biggest challenges we face. What you're going to see is a great deal of focus on cost cutting, efficiencies, and consolidation. And so there will be opportunities, because whenever there is a significant shake-up of priorities, there are winners as well as losers. When we looked at the way we put together the budget at DHS during my period of time, just to give you a sense of the various components, a good deal of it was driven by the personnel costs. We had congressional mandates to add more personnel, particularly operational personnel. HR and personnel costs wind up taking about 70 to 80% of the budget. This is important to reflect upon when you look at where savings are going to come from, because that creates a major constraint, and it's not one that can be easily or flexibly diminished over a period of time. We also used to see consistently additions in congressional mandates to give more money in grants to state and locals than we had asked for. And again, that's because it plays to a political reality, which is that most political figures, with some exceptions, consider the absolute acme of success to be able to give money out for free. And so if you can go back to your home state and say, oh, look, here's money for something, and you didn't have to tax the home state people directly for it, that's considered a win-win. So that was also part of the dynamic. What that means is, in this environment, if you are dealing with the government as a business partner, it's going to be about value and, frankly, low cost. What they talk about is low cost, technically acceptable. Now, I'm going to argue it's a little more complicated than that, but I definitely think that the saving and the budget impact is going to be a bigger element now than it's been during the last 10 years that I've been involved on the other side of this business. With this in mind, I think these are the kinds of considerations that are going to come up when we talk about how to sell to the government and how to sell to the government successfully. First and foremost, you're going to have to make the case that it is lower cost. That's going to be an important, necessary element of success. It's not sufficient, but it's necessary. Second point will be mission focus, an appreciation of whether the solution you're offering meets the mission of the client, in this case the agency, will be an important selling point. And that means you have to appreciate what the mission is. It means you're there not just to sell what you make, you're there to understand what the customer wants. Sometimes, by the way, that requires you to educate the customer about what the customer should want. And that doesn't always mean more, bigger, and more costly and complex. Sometimes it means simpler. Often I find people face a choice when they sell to the government. They can either sell once and sell as much as they can, or they can figure out what is the right performing product and service, perhaps a little less elaborate and less expensive, that will actually satisfy the customer and keep the customer coming back more and more. Finally, I would say in regard to these elements, there's a kind of a reading between the lines. If you know your customer, and you have what they call customer intimacy, and I mean this in a good way, not in the way that we read about the Secret Service. If you have customer intimacy, you understand sometimes there are things that are not in the RFP that are nevertheless important to the customer. And if you can configure your approach in a way that addresses that need, I think that's an important advantage in going forward.